Don't turn it off now. You need this stuff. Tampa Bay's Tan Talk Radio Network.
You are about to enter the arena of real news and factual commentary on the voice of reason here on the Tan Talk Radio Network. Now, here is your host for today's program.
Hello, everybody. This is Kevin Carey, and I welcome all of you to our latest edition of the Voice of Reason. With me is Ed Golly on the telephone. Ed, are you there?
I'm on station.
Great. Nice to have you here. Our good friend Gary Gibbons is off this month, but he'll be back in September. But we missed him. All right. There's a lot to go over here, and we're going to jump right into it. The first thing we're going to talk about is the Trump meeting with Putin in Alaska. There's a lot of Epstein issues. I want to talk about the Senate races a little bit and what's happening in Texas, with these attempts to arrest, Beto O'Rourke, which is absurd. There's an update also about a little bit about what's happening with Hope, Florida, which we've talked about quite a bit. And also the appointment of Ed Roberts to pursue possible criminal charges against Letitia James and Adam Schiff. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the National Guard. No reason for them to go into D.C., but of course, Trump needs to find something to deflect the problems with Epstein. And so hopefully we'll get to all that and whatever else Ed may want to talk about. But let's jump right into the big issue is tomorrow. Trump is meeting in Alaska with Putin. Now, Zelensky's not going to be there. I'm not sure why they think a non-party or a party should not be at attendance. Ed, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, Trump's dumbing it down now to nothing more than a listening session. But what I think he wants to do more than anything is get his Nobel Peace out of it. And he thinks that if he can get Putin to agree to a ceasefire, then the ball ends up in Zelensky's court, so that if Zelensky doesn't agree to it and keeps fighting to defend it or take back his territory, Trump can point the finger of war at Zelensky and then declare to the world, hey, I brokered a peace deal, but Zelensky's the one that wants the war. And then they can follow up by cutting off all military aid to Ukraine by claiming that Zelensky's a warmonger. So I think that's what he's trying to set up here. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, he could orchestrate theater, but I think we all know that Trump will do nothing against what Putin wants. He just won't. Putin has the goods on Trump in many ways. And when Trump campaigned that he would end the war in one day, which he did not do, but what that would have been, I'll just agree to everything Putin wants. So that's not a negotiation. And I mean, to show no respect at all for even having Zelensky at that table is really not appropriate at all. But keep in mind what Putin wants is everything they've stolen already plus more. So I don't know. And again, I've got to give a lot of credit to Zelensky. Here's a president, used to be a comedian, but he has stood up and, we know he didn't have a lot of the ace cards in his hand. He stood up strong to Russia. He stood up strong to Trump. I'm sure he was not very happy when Trump won. We were much more supportive under the Biden administration. But he has stood up and he says this is not going to happen this way. And we've got to give him a lot of credit, really, really do. But so we'll see what's going to happen. But I don't think much is going to come of it because Trump is just going to do whatever Putin wants. He's not there as a mediator. Now, he's made some statements in the press suggesting he would get tough on Putin. That will never happen. Anybody who thinks he's going to get tough on Putin is just in another world. So, but not to have Zelensky at the table is just absurd. So we'll see what happens. We'll know. We were saying by the time this is rebroadcast tomorrow night, we'll know. But my prediction is not very much will happen with that. All right, I want to move on to Epstein. Quickly, we do have an audio real quick on Putin before we move on to Epstein.
Going to go to Putin and he's going to collapse. Lift all the sanctions on the Russians. Agree to not fund Ukraine. Agree to stop any arms transfers to Ukraine. Why would he do that? Because it is so evil. It is so outrageous. And it saves Putin. Putin can't win this war, but Ukraine can lose it. I think he is going to go to Putin and he's going to collapse.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point. The point we're making is that I don't think anyone should think that that Trump is going to stand up to Putin in any reasonable way. That's all going to be show. Moving on to the
one thing I've heard, Kevin, some commentators suggest is that Trump could, if he could succeed in getting Putin to agree to a ceasefire, then he could move United States contractors in to start cleaning up the mess Putin's made and threaten him by saying, if any of my contractors get hurt or any American people get hurt or killed, that's going to be a very serious matter that we are going to respond to. And so that would be a way of keeping Putin from just agreeing to a ceasefire and then 10 days later going back on the offensive, or a month later, giving him time to regroup and rebuild his supplies and his military, maybe get some North Koreans in, whatever, and then continue the attack.
Well, the main thought I had there was,
that's the thought. It could happen.
Well, one thought there is this will allow all his cronies to make a lot of money rebuilding Ukraine. That's one thing. All these contractors, but Trump will never do anything contrary to Putin. Period. That will not happen. I mean, he has let Putin come down this road, and Putin is a war criminal. He's violated many humanitarian statutes. He's violated his own agreement. He had an agreement not to go further. Ukraine is a independent state. And the other point I want to make is the other faction here that's very upset are the European countries. They are all very upset about this because this affects security into Europe, all the NATO countries. Yeah. There's only one country out of 23 that's not complaining about that, and that's Hungary. So you would be shocked to know that, given that's also an authoritarian regime. But Trump doesn't care about NATO. He doesn't care about these countries like England and France and Italy and Sweden.
No, he wants to get us out of it and dissolve it. He looks at it as an expense we shouldn't need to incur. And the one good thing for him about this negotiation is it's another effort on his part to distract us from the Epstein files, right?
Right, which is a good
at least for 2
segue.
days.
Well, and the challenge with Epstein, and if anyone has any doubt that Epstein has legs, just go to YouTube and notice the amount of coverage this still has. And I think the basic reason for that is because that people understand that when you coddle a pedophile, which is what's happened with Maxwell, now sending her to a minimum security prison in Texas that she was not even entitled to go to because of her conviction for being a sexual predator. People understand that. And even we've said this before, the conservatives, Joe Rogan, and people on that side, Musk, as you know, have talked about this. They were looking for this, and this was their primary issue. And every month it goes by, it's just going to get worse. It's just going to get worse.
Mm-hmm. In spite of all the distractions.
3 months worth of inventory sitting at my factory in the U.S. I have maybe 2 months worth left in my warehouse in Minnesota. And when that's gone, I have no more revenue. I cannot pay my employees. I cannot pay my bills. I cannot pay the loans, which I have leveraged my house against. So we could lose our house.
What we're talking about.
I do not have the $230,000 that were just immediately dropped in front of me to get my products into the US. So I am asking, begging for support from both sides of both parties to support our small businesses and get rid of these tariffs on US-owned small businesses. It doesn't just affect me. When I go out of business, it affects all of those contractors that I pay to help me with my business, all those American-owned businesses, my trucking company that brings me my container, the bookkeepers and accountants and marketing teams that work with me. They now don't get to have the revenue they're getting from me, and I'm just one business that's at risk of going out of business. There are thousands of us. So this is hurting more than just people importing from China.
I think that one of the things that drives me the most crazy about this is that we have.
Yeah, and that was before we jump into Epstein. That had to do with tariffs, and I wanted to play that because it was a small business owner, and Trump gets up there and he pounds his chest about how successful these tariffs are. And it really affects people. This is a business owner who's going out of business. And she's not alone. So I think it is important. We don't really have a lot of time today to talk about the tariff issue, but I don't in any way view the tariff issue as a success. And this is an example. And you heard her say, I'm begging both sides. She's begging. She's desperate. And again, all this is doing ultimately was funding these tax cuts for the rich. That's what that was all about. I mean, this playbook.
And these are exactly the kind of stories that Trump will want to obfuscate, which is why he's putting his own lackeys and stooges into these departments that will be responsible for reporting on how many businesses need to fold, how many people lose their jobs, how much inflation we incur from the tariffs. He's going to want to cover all those figures up and give us a great, big, beautiful lie about how successful the economy is as a result of the tariffs, when in fact it will be doing the opposite.
Well, he's going to, right. He doesn't, he always tries to pursue something that's not the truth, but the truth is that person and all over this country. So it's affecting them. It's affecting the economy. We've said many times, and I think it's going to be accurate, this economy is not going to be in very good shape in 2026. I think this Epstein issue, which I want to talk about in a second, is not going to go away. But the tariff issue is going to get worse. There are many, many people who are suffering from this, in addition to consumers who are paying a tax. This is a sales tax on consumers, nothing more, to fund the tax cuts for the rich. It's very simple. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it hurts the lowest income people segment of society the most. And the tax cuts benefit the top 10% of income earners in the country, to the tune of an average of over $13,000 a year. So,
the Republican Party loves to tout that they're the party of business. They're not. They're killing these small businesses. So again, it's hypocrisy. And our job is to speak the truth to madness and just point this out, because it's going to get worse. All right, let's move on to Epstein for a minute. This issue is not going away, and there are a number of reasons for that. One is, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, you've got conservatives like Rogan and Musk and others who are making the point that they want to know what's happening here. And we've said before, this was a campaign promise that Trump made in 2024, that he would get to the bottom of this, saying this was all liberal issue. The Bill Clintons of the world would be in trouble when it's and let me be clear, we don't, as Democrats, if the truth is Clinton's, done bad things and that's fine. We just want the truth. We're not here to protect anybody. So that's one difference between the parties. But the fundamental issue, besides the fact that conservatives are a number of them are still pushing the issue, it's not the Democrats, is everyone understands the basic fundamental point that pedophilia is wrong. We're not talking about, white collar crime, mortgages and that kind of thing. We're talking about children. These are 14, 15, even 13 years old who are affected by this. And again, keep in mind, our listeners, this is not 50. This is over 1,000. Over 1,000 young girls that were traumatized. One who committed suicide just a few months ago. So this is not some theoretical political discussion. Ed, do you want any thoughts on that?
No, I think you've covered it really. Well, and yes, I think that we need to bear in mind that all of these things that are going on in the country, what we just discussed, putting troops in Washington, D.C., going after Barack Obama, all are distractions to try to get this story to go away, to put out this fire that he himself started. And I agree with you, it's not working. My question to you is, do you think whenever Congress is reconvened that it'll be a top priority issue to vote on releasing those files as we get closer to that day?
Well, if that becomes politics, certainly Mike Johnson will do anything Trump wants. So, what Trump did, by the way, from a legal perspective, there was a judicial order entered a couple of days ago by a federal judge denying release of the grand jury testimony, which was always, and I said several weeks ago, always just a ruse. There was one day of grand jury. There was one person spoke. That was not where the issue is. But see, Trump's administration and Trump individually was trying to placate everyone. Well, here's the grand jury stuff. Or if, I asked the judge to give it and the judge wouldn't give it to us, when I've said before, it's very rare that it's confidential information. But that was never the point here. That's a distraction by Trump again. The issue is we've got videos, we've got records, all the things that Pam Bondi promised to release, as she's showing us, and they're showing us the files literally. So this whole grand jury issue was always just a distraction. On top of that, in that ruling, the judge made very clear that Maxwell is by no means a victim. She is a serious sexual predator and should not be given any favors, which she's already been done. Now, what's interesting, as time goes on, you hear this is what Trump is worrying about. As time goes on, more of this stuff leaks. There was a inmate who was with Maxwell in Tallahassee before she was moved to, Club Fed, the clubhouse, the soft space in Texas where she wasn't even entitled to go. But she said that Maxwell told her that she had the goods on Trump, and when Biden was president, she was trying to maneuver that and get Biden to pursue that, to send Trump down. He would not bite, which is appropriate in the sense that we said this about what happened a few weeks ago, which was not appropriate when the assistant attorney general went down and speak with Maxwell for 2 days and then gave her the free ride to the soft, cushy place in Texas. He understood that you should not be dealing with a convicted felon who doesn't have information on another case. And that's the situation where you might consider doing that. But so she was trying to play Biden. Now she's playing Trump. The difference is you can play Trump just like Putin knows how to play Trump. He's very playable because he doesn't have a whole sense of his own priorities and what he wants other than, fame and wealth and whatnot. But These things are going to continue. There was another interview. Again, this is, death by 1,000 cuts. Another interview where a gentleman was on a radio show saying that he was at Trump's house. This wasn't Epstein's house. He was at Trump's house, and he was there. Trump owned these Junior Little Miss, these pageants. He was sick. That gave him the reason to go into these rooms and watch these teenage girls undress. Just a sick man. But he said he was at a party at Trump's house where there were 14, 13, 15-year-old girls, and it was sexual. And he left because he said, I don't want to get in trouble. So is that the truth? I can't verify that. I can't vouch for him. But these things are coming out. And that's the reason they were going to have this emergency meeting with the Vice President Vance last Wednesday night with the Attorney General and other cabinet members, because they are scared to death of this issue. And the only reason they canceled that meeting, Ed, was because the press found out about it. So it was kind of if they know about it, we really can't do this. But these issues are just going to continue, and more is going to come out in terms of Epstein. And he may pardon Maxwell. Frankly, I said last week, James Carville thinks do it. Because he's pardoning pedophiles. That's not a bad short ad for your campaign in 2026.
That's right.
So it's going to continue, and there's a lot. Again, our listeners can go on YouTube or just on the internet. There was a poll I read this morning, and I know we have a poll watch after our break, but it's only 3% of Americans are satisfied with the disclosures in the Epstein case. Think about that. 3%. I mean, you can't get
That's essentially
anyone.
Nobody.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so when the entire country is not happy and also knows that this is shenanigans, that the more you try and cover something up, the more people care about it. I'm not sure why Trump doesn't understand basic human nature.
Goes back to Watergate, right? The cover-up became the issue that led to Nixon's resignation, not the crime itself. But of course, this is such a horrible crime. He can't come out and in any way allow it to be known if he did commit that crime that he did, because that I think would ruin him. Grabbing women by their private parts and being convicted of 34 felonies to the party of Christian conservative values and law and order. These are not issues of any concern. But pedophilia, I think they wouldn't tolerate. But you never know.
Well, I was watching
unbelievably loyal.
I was watching an interview with Michael Wolff last night. Michael Wolff has written 3 or 4 books on Trump. Very good writer, and he's got a lot of information. He spent years with Epstein, and he's got lots of tapes on Epstein. He says it's hard to get the media to be interested in these tapes and audio and video tapes he has, but he says he's probably also going to write a book about this. But there's a lot out there. Trump likes to say that he barely knew Epstein. They were best buddies for years and years, and Trump says he he broke that off when, he was poaching, his 16-year-old workers at Mar-a-Lago, when that wasn't the case at all. That didn't stop until 2004 when Epstein got upset because Trump went behind his back on a residential purchase down in Palm Beach and then doubled his money. So everything Trump says, or most of what he says, is just not true. So we'll be, we'll keep talking about that. One thing I wanted to mention briefly, because there is a lot to talk about, but I want to share with our listeners. It was on the front page of the Tampa Bay Times yesterday about Hope, Florida. That's an issue that the governor would love to bury. But there's a front page, and I'm sure with those listeners who have the internet, they can pick up yesterday's paper. They said over 22 days in last September, then Chief Deputy Attorney General John Gard repeatedly removed reference to his office to drafts of the settlement proposal. Keep in mind, this was a settlement with Centene for fraud over billing by Centene to the state, and the issue is $10 million was improperly directed to Hope, Florida, and many of that was used for political purposes. Centene's lawyers inserted language emphasizing that the company was directed by the state to donate $10 million of its $67 million settlement to the foundation. The attorneys insisted that Florida's Office of Inspector General or Attorney General be mentioned in the agreement. So the point is, they knew about the shenanigans at the time, and they knew there was a problem, and Centene wanted to be protected from that. So they paid $67 million, and they were directed that everyone knew it at all times that $10 million should have improperly and illegally went to this separate company that then, as our listeners know, and it's a bigger story than we can talk about, but much of that money was used to oppose two constitutional amendments on the ballot. That was not what that money was meant to address when it was paid by Centene to the state. So that's all I want to mention about that. Why don't we? It's almost 10:30 morning time. It'll be 8:30 for tomorrow's rebroadcast. Let's take a break right now. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Are you a writer, inventor? Do you have questions about your intellectual property rights? Well, tune in every Tuesday and Thursday morning at 11 o'clock for Joy on Paper. Once a month, I will have a special guest, the writer's legal eagle, Bill Larson of Larson & Larson, who can answer your questions. Protect your valuable work. Email me your questions to patsy.radio@gmail.com and then listen in every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 a.m. right here on Tampa Bay's Tan Talk Radio Network. That's patsy.radio@gmail.com.
You're listening to the Voice of Reason on the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Hi there, I'm Robin Savage, stand-up comic. Are you sick of the news getting pushed around by two sides, always saying the other side is wrong? You deserve to enjoy the news.
That's what's up, Robin. I'm your host, Matt James, from Stand Up for News. We're stand-up comics, and we tell the news. The news doesn't have any legs and can't stand up for its own self. Join us and special guests like local hero comics like Donnie Stopa, all the way to legends like Tommy Chong, here on WTAN Radio.
Every Thursday night from 6 to 8 p.m.
And now it's time for the Only a Conservative Could Think It Minute with your host, Ed Golly.
Texas state legislator Giovanni Capriglione, co-author of the 2021 law that banned nearly all abortions in the state, confirmed last month that he had an affair with an exotic dancer named Alex Grace for over 17 years. Capriglione, a GOP member of Texas's House of Representatives since 2013, shocked Texas political insiders by dropping his re-election bid. 3 days later, Grace explained how she met Capriglione in 2004 at age 18 and went on to claim that he paid for her to undergo multiple abortions over the years. The Human Life Protection Act, the 2021 so-called trigger ban that Capriglione introduced, was designed to prohibit abortion in Texas as soon as the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. Capriglione frequently touted his family values platform. Think about that.
Don't turn it off now. You need this stuff. Tampa Bay's Tan Talk Radio Network.
All right, we're back for a poll watch. And I've already mentioned that the small percentage of those who approve of what's been happening with Epstein. The president's poll numbers are going down. The last one I saw today, Ed, was 43%. What polls have you seen on Trump's?
I've seen them as low as 38% approval rating. And as far as handling the Epstein files, I see a Washington Post poll from last week said that a quarter of Americans, 26%, have no opinion about it. They showed that 58% disapprove and 16% approve. So that's not too good.
No, I think
and
that's.
then in support of releasing all the Epstein files, Democrats, 90% want to see them all released. Independents, 86%. All Republicans, 83%. And even MAGA Republicans, 82%. That's, 8 out of 10 Americans that are MAGA supporters want to see all the Epstein files released, which is why I think I agree with you. This story is not going to go away. And I think it's going to affect the elections in the midterms and the congressional elections that are coming up.
And I think the reason it has legs is there is more here. I don't think Trump will be going to this degree, and we know who the man is. He's just as frankly as bad as Epstein. The latest CNN poll has on Trump 42% approval, 56 disapproval. So those are not strong numbers, and we don't think it's going to get any better. The Epstein issue is not going away. Congress, again, Mike Johnson, who's just, he's like Trump's, poodle. He does nothing against Trump. And Trump said to Johnson, I want you to go away for August. Now, I know August also was some time for vacation, but Johnson left earlier, and we'll hope this Epstein issue goes away when we come back in September. And that's not happening. And it is getting, the interest in it is increased, and polls have showed that, Ed. And as I said, 3% of this country is satisfied with what's happened. And that's an issue of their own making. They promised something and they did not deliver because they thought it was going to be an issue with the liberal Democrats and Clinton. We're saying, as I said earlier, whatever the truth is, the truth is. Whoever is involved in this, there's reference to Dershowitz, there's references to Prince Andrew, who was very much involved in this. And I was listening to a British show on that last night. Prince Andrew, they paid a huge settlement on that, and that's the primary person there, Virginia, is now Virginia Roberts. Her married name is Dufresne or something, but she's the one who committed suicide in April. So these numbers are not getting better, and 6 out of 10 Americans do not approve of the big bill. I know it's not new news, but that's not getting any better, and it's going to get worse. So I'm not sure.
Trump runs around telling us it's the most popular bill that's ever been passed in the history of the country. The guy, he's just a lie factory. It's unbelievable. But here's my question to you, Kevin. Since Johnson shut down Congress early, it was because he didn't want this vote to come to the floor to release the Epstein files, right? Which means he can't really control it when they get back in session, if enough Republicans want to see it released and vote with the Democrats to do it.
Yeah, and keep in mind, when you say enough, you mean 3. They have a 3-vote majority. So they don't need much. Yes. And I got to think at least 3 out of these. And they have subpoenas, let me be clear, there have been subpoenas issued to various members. So Congress, they can't just sit on this. Now, and with this topic we've talked about quite a bit too, Ed, these Congress people that are just so, they do nothing that Trump, they just jump as high as Trump asks them to, or tells them to jump. But if they're all up for re-election in 2026, so come this fall, they're within that 1-year period. It could be an issue because they follow Trump only as to the extent it helps their career. They could care less about Trump. In fact, I've read most people do not like Trump. Trump doesn't have really a close bond of people around him. But they feel like he's a necessary evil. So so we'll see what happens. But the polls are not his friend. And to me, it's even worse, as you said, when he gets up and says, "Oh, I've got an 82% approval rating," and you go, "On what planet is that, Trump?" Right. I mean, it sounds so absurd. I was listening to something the other day where they said, "Well, either he's totally ignorant or he's getting bad information from his inner circle." But either way, it looks silly. So. And I want to just mention briefly, moving topics for a second. Oh, we do have, before I do that, I did want to highlight the fact that this Epstein issue is not going away, and I should have done this before the break, and I apologize. Some commentators have been talking about it again and again and again, and I want to give our listeners just a sample of what's being on the television news about Epstein.
Donald Trump's plane, he said, flew to Epstein's Island at least 37 times, tracked on radar. All flights are safe for 10 years or more.
Sex abuse is already acceptable to MAGA folks, okay? Lack of consent is already acceptable to MAGA voters. So, now they get to go through their own process of deciding how are they going to make sex trafficking of children okay, the way they made beating cops on the Capitol steps for a lie okay.
Yeah.
We get to watch this. They're just going to melt down morally and try to make sense of it. And Epstein's never going away.
Donald.
Yeah, well, Trump's plane could not have flown
asked about the release of the Epstein files, and he's still going with this thing. I want to release it, but people could get hurt. People like Trump could get hurt, right?
Your Deputy Attorney General sat down with Ghislaine Maxwell for 9 hours. I'm just wondering when the American people get to hear what she said during that interview.
Well, I don't know, because I haven't spoken about it, but he's a very talented guy, Todd Blanche, and a very straight shooter.
Yeah.
And I think he probably wanted to know, just to get a feeling of it, because we'd like to release everything, but we don't want people to get hurt that shouldn't be hurt.
Yeah.
And I would assume that was why he was there. I want to release everything. I just don't want people to get hurt. Right. You can't have people associated.
All of a sudden, people getting hurt matters to Trump. Release the MLK files. MLK's descendants said, we don't necessarily want this stuff released. Doesn't matter. Release it anyway. But now only when it comes to Epstein, you don't want people getting hurt.
We got one more from our friend from the Daily Show.
Yes! Donald Trump neither writes pictures nor draws pictures, which, as the experts will tell you, are the two leading causes of pictures. And obviously for the Epstein case, Trump has no shortage of caddies willing to shame themselves. Here's Congressman Tim Burchett, pre-Trump, being named in the files.
Congressman, why do you think so many Democrats are committed to protecting the list of a dead pedophile?
Too many of my colleagues, I'm afraid, are compromised in this area for whatever reason.
I'm sorry, Trump was also on Epstein's plane.
President Trump admitted that he flew on his dadgum plane. Just because somebody flew on a plane doesn't mean they're a dadgum pedophile.
I honestly think my favorite thing about this is watching conspiracy theorists have to unravel the red string that they themselves originally strung out. Here's the OG conspiracy theorist Glenn Beck at his excitement for Trump's beginning of the second term.
The only thing I care about is the scandal of the pedophiles, and in the next 10 days, you're going to see the Epstein file released.
What the left is saying, and some people now on his team are saying, he's in the report. With 15-year-olds? Really? Do you actually believe that? 15, 16-year-olds? That's not Donald Trump. It's not Donald Trump. I don't believe that. Do you?
Mm-hmm.
I say that's no way that's true.
All right. Well, that's just giving you a sense of that. And when, by the way, the joke about the pictures, the Trump defenders are saying that he wouldn't have drawn the picture or whatever, which is absurd. But listen to what
I do want to back up to the very beginning of that with Stephanie Miller, who claimed Trump's plane flew to Epstein's Island. That island is not big enough to accommodate a 757. So he never could have landed his plane on the island. He would have had to land on another island and then gone over. That's my understanding of the situation, which means that he would claim, well, I went to the nearest airport, but didn't necessarily go to the island. So, there's going to be a lot of people saying a lot of things that may or may not be true about this.
Let me respond to what Trump said. He said there that he hasn't yet talked to Todd Blanche. Who would believe that? He sent Blanche down there.
Of course he had. He was probably the first person to talk to him after the interview.
He said, "I've not talked to Todd Blanche." That is about on a scale of 1 to 10 and 11 in terms of fibs. Because as we've talked about before, number one, for the deputy attorney general to go down there to talk to a convicted pedophile is in and of itself unusual and has never been done before, as many commentators have noted. And then after that, he said, "I want to release all the files." He's still saying that. So he talks out of both sides of his mouth, and I don't know why his supporters think it's okay that he does this. It's become acceptable. But those, with the old Pinocchio, his nose would grow 25 feet when he makes those comments. And he says it in a way, "Oh, I don't want anyone hurt." Who does Trump care about? One person, himself.
One person.
He could give a damn about anybody else, including Maxwell and all these other people. So for him to say, I still want to release the files, then release the GD files. And you wonder why only 3% of the country is happy with where this is right now. But to say that I haven't talked to Todd Blanche yet is just that may be the biggest lie of his million lies I've heard. And he says it with such false security or sincerity. Oh, I haven't talked to as if this was not a big deal. This is the biggest deal on his desk right now. And he and Todd Blanche have spoken many, many, many times. So there's no doubt about that. So so we'll move on. So I know we're spending a lot of time on Epstein today, but it's a very important issue. I don't think it's going away. I wanted to talk briefly, and then Ed, I want you to talk about some things you might want to talk about. We've talked about the elections next year, and I think there is a decent chance that the House will become Democrat again. Although, there's the issue in Texas where they're although you should only redo the census every 10 years, they're doing it after 5 years. Again, they're just doing whatever Trump tells them to do to redo a census, which again is unprecedented in the middle of the 10-year term, to steal another 5 seats. All the Democrats of the state legislature have left the state of Texas. So that's drama. There's even more drama. I was listening yesterday where they want to have Beto O'Rourke arrested for violating a temporary restraining order regarding raising money to help these people, to help the legislators, have eat and lodging and food and whatnot. But that's a mess. But so we'll see how that plays out. I do think at some point it's going to come to a head. Go ahead, Ed.
My understanding of that is what he's asserting is that if you or I were to donate money to that Democratic Party, they can only use it for political purposes to promote their campaigns. They can't use it to pay their mortgage or to pay their credit card bills. And so they're trying to use that angle to get these people to force them back home so that they can get an income and maintain their household.
Yeah, it's hard to broad brush these issues because there's much more to these issues. And I will say, as a former judge, that temporary restraining order that was entered last Friday by a Republican, apparently in Texas, you run by party, which is unlike in Florida. But I don't think the temporary restraining order was valid. It was overly broad. But yeah, the point was, and Beto O'Rourke, I've never seen him so fired up. He gave this firing up speech over the weekend, and yes, if apparently under that temporary restraining order, if he was raising money for their lodging, other non-political purposes, or I mean, he certainly can raise money for a charity, but I don't think that's going to go anywhere, and I don't think that they're calling the attorney general wants to put him in jail. There's such an overreaction by these folks down there, and then so we'll see. But the other point I wanted to make briefly was, I think there have been some dynamics on the Senate side. People have kind of seemed like they can see that there's no way the Democrats can retake the Senate, and it's 53 to 47. So they'd be with 3, it's 50-50, and the vice president would break a tie. So you need 4 seats that would be flipped. I think a very good chance North Carolina will, because Tillis is retiring, and a very, very popular Governor Cooper is running. Texas may be in play because they're now, the attorney general I just mentioned is now running against the incumbent, and who can be the more MAGA of the two, which helps you in the primary, but it does not help you in the general election. Even the incumbent has had to talk tough, and it's crazy. So
right,
Texas,
because remember that a Senate race cannot be gerrymandered, right?
Correct.
And
it's the whole state.
And yes.
Well,
yeah.
Well,
they could end up with a Democratic senator.
Those of us
Texas.
who watch this stuff at 10 o'clock at night, Ohio is now in play. Now, Ohio, Vance was appointed, to when he ran for vice president. So that was the incumbent isn't appointed. He's never, he has not won that seat via an election. And the gentleman Brown, who lost in the Senate seat just last year, has said he's going to run for that seat. So although Ohio has become much more Republican, generally speaking, it's gone for, I think it gone for Trump all 3 times. That is in play. Now, Florida also is a special election. Those are both, Ohio and Florida are special elections, because also with the Secretary of State being Florida's senator, the Attorney General Ashley Moody was appointed to the U.S. Senate. So she has also a special election where she's never run for that seat, although she has won, she ran and won as Attorney General, just as Pam Bondi had been Attorney General. So my point is, Ohio, I think, may be in play. Maine, there's a very popular governor in Maine. That could be in play. Maine is not, generally speaking, a heavy conservative state. Collins may run again. She hasn't announced yet. And the other state, which is possible, is Iowa. Not to get too much in the weeds, but Ernst, has said some things that aren't particularly, make a lot of sense lately. And she hasn't even said whether she's going to run for re-election again, Joan Ernst. But there's a Democrat who's running. I forget his name, but he's someone who's come through a lot of very difficult circumstances. I think it's spina bifida and some other things, but has a very great human story to tell. So those are the 5 seats that they need to keep the other ones. And there's also, and I'll move on, there are 38 Republican seats up and only 28 Republican seats and only 13 Democratic seats. So that also helps. You've got more.
Now you're talking about the House now, right?
No, the Senate seats. The open.
In the Senate?
There are 28 senators.
Okay.
Yeah, every 6 years you've got to run, as you know, and then there are 28 senators who have to run for re-election.
Yeah.
And 13
and these
Democrats.
Elections will be in November of 2026, right?
Correct. So
you're looking at about 14 months from now, which will give that bill, the big beautiful bill, time enough to wreck the economy. And a lot of businesses, I shouldn't laugh. It's going to be a disaster.
Well, it is. It's from a political standpoint, Ed. I hate to predict doom and gloom, but that will help the party because it affects real people. Again, I keep waiting for some Republican to complain about the fact that there's been no hearings for these people being pulled off the streets and now sitting in a gulag in El Salvador. I don't know why that doesn't bother people, and we say that every week, and no one seems to care. And I know that the challenge there is probably that it doesn't affect people's day-to-day lives like the price of gas does and the price of groceries, or just generally these sales tax increases. So, but these are, if you as a country believe, that we stand for something, we stand for the fact we don't, whisk these people off the street without a hearing, without a lawyer, and put them in a detention facility where there's torture down in El Salvador and also Cuba. But they think that's yesterday's news, so we'll see.
Yeah.
One more
thing.
We
also stand for reliable information about our economy, and that's going away because, as we know, Trump will never admit a mistake. And when these tariffs don't have the effect that he thinks they will, he's not going to back down and say, "Oops, I goofed. I'm going to go get rid of them all."
Yeah,
he never had he never had the legal authority to impose them anyway.
Well, that's true, and I've always agreed with your point that it's an authoritarian regime. So whether it's just like Hungary, just like North Korea, and we know the playbook, and it's that we don't want anyone to know the facts. So we're going to destroy the press. We'll just sue anybody. And that was one of the issues that Michael Wolff raised when he was asked, why isn't media picking up on, buying your tapes and videos? And he said they're all afraid to get sued by Trump. He sued CBS, he sued ABC, and, to their shame, these big companies have paid him money. They've paid him ransom on frivolous claims. So it's unfortunate. Just a couple things briefly. There's so much going on in the news. I want to talk a little bit about the National Guard coming into Washington, D.C., although violent crime is at a 30-year low in Washington, D.C. And I just think the irony of all ironies, Ed, is that everyone begged Trump on January 6th to call in the National Guard to Washington when all of that was happening and people, officers and other people were dying, and he just laughed it off. He would not for a second consider calling in the National Guard when that should have been done on January 6th of 2021. This is just a joke, just like the one in LA was. Now, there's a difference between DC and states in that there's more jurisdiction, but it's only generally for 30 days and Congress has to reapprove. And I know, Ed, how you think, and I agree, they're just, his poodle. And so they're not going to push back on that. But at least the law is there can only be a 30-day period for this. And then it has to be further approved by Congress.
And even if they don't, and he continues it, what are they going to do about it? But what occurs to me, Kevin, is that if Trump really wants to significantly reduce crime in the District of Columbia, he should resign his presidency and drive to the nearest federal penitentiary and check himself in for life. Because he's the biggest damn criminal in Washington. It's unbelievable what this guy is doing. He has absolutely no respect for the Constitution or anything that it delegates. And as I just said, Congress won't even need to weigh in on this. If he wants to keep them in there, he's going to do it, and they're just going to go ahead and say, yes, sir, whatever you want, Mr. Dear Leader. So, that's the way to reduce crime. Get Trump out of office, and crime will drop precipitously. Gee, he's been convicted of 34 felonies.
Well, you're right, and it's hard to overstate this. I know the Republicans go, why are you so focused on Trump? But number one, he is a convicted felon. And number two, he does not follow the law and does not follow the Constitution. You're right.
See, I think this is just really rehearsal for when he will then go ahead and start putting the military into other cities, all with Democratic mayors, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, Oakland, so on, to stifle any protest that might evolve if he decides to stay in power past his term and declare martial law. If enough people protest, he's just going to send the military in. He knows that Hegseth will obediently comply and do whatever he wants. The irony is that 9 of the top 10 cities that have the highest crime rates are all red cities in red states run by Republican governors. Why doesn't he send the military there? Because it's not about controlling crime. It's about controlling the people if they get out of hand and protest too much. He doesn't want to see another kind of protest he had in 2016 when he won after all the women protested against him from all over the country and all over the world. And he thinks if the protests get to that level again, he wants the military to go in and squash it. Well,
all you need to know again is that crime is in a violent crime is at a 30-year low in the District of Columbia.
Exactly. That makes my point.
My father was in the military. I lived 8 years outside of D.C. with Andrews Air Force Base and the Bolling Air Force Base and the Pentagon, where my father had various assignments. And D.C. has always had a reputation for being an issue, but there's no emergency. I mean, when you're at a 30-year low, what about that suggests that you call in the National Guard? It is all about show. And our Republican friends, if they don't understand that, they're just being blind to the fact. And on top of the fact, he's such a showman. He's going to lead the Kennedy Center awards this year because he's the showman. That doesn't normally happen. But I know you want to talk a little bit about the Smithsonian Institute, Ed.
It's being turned into a museum of propaganda, which is just really chilling because Trump's effort to reshape American history in his vision is simply the action of a dictator. History is history, whether he tries to change it or not. And this is the playbook again of authoritarians around the world. It shows that he's trying to erase any parts of history that he doesn't like to create the illusion that white European settlers only did wonderful, commendable things in this country and build it into the greatest country in the world at no cost to anybody else, which simply isn't true.
I have never viewed the Smithsonian Institute as some kind of liberal bias. I view it as factual. I remember going there and seeing the, the Spirit of St. Louis with Lindbergh, and the Apollo. I think the Apollo 13 or one of the Apollo capsules is there. I think it was an earlier one where they died on the runway.
Fire?
Yeah, but it was right, and they have. But I have never perceived that the Smithsonian is some kind of liberal bias vehicle.
No. And then they'll want to carry it on into the textbooks of all the schools. Trump won the 2020 election and was defrauded out of it.
Well, and I heard last night,
same thing happening in Florida.
I heard last night a Republican congressman on this topic, and he said, well, to liberals, the Smithsonian may seem objective because it's toward their view. I have never thought about the Smithsonian in any way in a political view at all. So but again, they've got to support whatever Trump wants. But the thought of denigrating and changing history, and that we push too much white guilt. I mean, slavery existed. We treated black people as property. What about that should not be in a textbook? But they are a cult. They cannot say one thing against Trump, even though they know it's not true. And I keep waiting for that one day to come. And as much as I listen and read every week, I have not seen it yet. So that's
this might be something that Stephen Miller is behind, because he has come right out and said the only true Americans are white Western Europeans, as if the native people never existed, and all these poor black people that were brought over here to be slaves are citizens with the same rights of citizenship that he has, whether he likes it or not.
And people that read history may assume that slavery ended with the Civil War. It did not. It went on for many, many years after that. Just like
for 100 years, the minorities were oppressed in voting and in education, and access to any restaurant they wanted to go to, in every way they could be.
Well, I was going to say that. I mean, just tell your children or grandchildren. I'm blessed to have 2 grandchildren and another on the way. That there was a time when blacks had to eat in a different restaurant and go into a different bathroom. Jackie Robinson, who was the first black player, for the Dodgers, that the team would pull up and, well, you can't eat in this restaurant. I mean, the thought that was ever okay, and yet the Republicans are worried about this white guilt. So we'll get through it.
Yeah.
It's we got to speak out, and I know that a lot of this becomes negative, but we have to speak out, and we are. I mean, I think we at least can say we're doing what we can do to inform everyone about what's going on. So. I think we're kind of wrapping up. I do have a quote of the day. This is from Nietzsche. I'm kind of highfalutin here. Just do what must be done. This may not bring happiness, but it will bring greatness. So on that note, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you, Ed. It's great talking with you.
Thank you.
And just remember, if anytime a conservative tells you something, make sure it's true and make them prove it. See you next week.